Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a new threat to the United States today. During his State of the Union address in Moscow, Putin vowed to target the U.S. with new hypersonic missiles if the U.S. deployed missiles in Europe, if the U.S. continues to deploy missiles in Europe. Putin did stress, however, that Russia would only act if the U.S. made the first move. Russia claims its new weapon travels thousands of miles before detonating and 20 times as fast as the speed of sound. Joining us now is former State Department senior advisor to the Trump and Bush administrations, Whiton. Also still with us, Newsmax contributor and president of the Reagan Legacy Foundation, Michael Reagan. Christian, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. How serious is this threat from Vladimir Putin?
You know, it's probably not as bad as it sounds. The INF treaty is dead. It's dead because Russia killed it by not complying with its provisions, by deploying intermediate-range nuclear missiles. You know, they've been working on technology like hypersonics, old-fashioned intermediate-range nuclear missiles, ballistic missiles, unmanned underwater vehicles. But Putin really highlighted what basically are probably demonstration weapons so far. Really, part of it is an effort to get us to spend more, probably, as opposed to an actual change in the strategic picture.
Michael, this is kind of, pretty typical for a Russian head of state. America starts focusing more attention on North Korea or other issues. The Russian premier has to stand up and say, I need some attention, too, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely right. He can't let Trump have the upper hand, or the United States of America have the upper hand. I remember traveling in Italy during the 1980s. My father put all those missiles in Western Europe aimed over there at Eastern Russia. And there was 500,000 people that showed up in front of the hotel I was supposed to stay at there in Rome. And the Secret Service told me not to stay there, go somewhere else. So we went somewhere else in Italy. But this is the game that's played with Putin and what have you. He's gonna make noise. He's got to look strong in front of his people, like the President of the United States has to look strong in front of the United States of America. So this is a mine's bigger than yours going on.
Yeah, now, that's something that Vladimir Putin seems to specialize in. Guys, the Kremlin is also reportedly concerned about Putin's approval ratings over the past few months. A poll released in January found that his favorability is at a low 64%. Which is probably inflated somewhat. It's the lowest it's been in 5 years. Another poll last October revealed that only 40% of Russians would vote for Putin if another election were held. Christian, how serious is this for Putin?
I'm somewhat, as you implied, somewhat doubtful of the accuracy of polls coming out of Russia. So, you call up someone, you're a stranger, and ask them if they approve of Putin, you may not get the most honest answer. That said, he doesn't face any noticeable political challenge and seems to be on pretty strong footing. The economy in Russia typically has been tied to the price of oil, which has been down a bit, thanks in large part to President Trump's efforts and others. On the other hand, also, economic pressure, we certainly have caused Russia economic pain, but that hasn't changed Russian conduct. And that doesn't really seem, at least on the outside, on the surface, to influence Russian political behavior.
No, and when you don't have a democracy, it's a lot easier to stay in power.
There's a lot of people who have come up against Putin who somehow just disappear. I don't think Putin's worried about low ratings in the polls. There's nobody's going to challenge Vladimir Putin because they care more about their lives than they do care about being the president or the leader of Russia.
That's a good point, Michael. But there is, his name is slipping me now. Christian might know, but there is, some stronger opposition today, more so than in the past, right, Christian?
Well, you have opposition on the outside. You have people who are very outspoken, Kasparov, a lot of people who are, very supportive of Ukraine, for example. The question is always on the inside. There certainly is a baseline level of protest. He does not enjoy anything close to unanimous support, but he probably does, at least appear to have a significant base of support. And while Russia is repressive, it's not nearly as repressive, for example, as China. So you are allowed to certainly express dissenting opinions. The people he acts against sort of more forcefully are the ones who appear to have organized political parties or very well-financed oligarchs who challenge him. So, some opposition, but nothing that appears likely to change the political trajectory of Russia.
All right. Well, President Trump is getting ready for his trip to Vietnam next week, where he'll meet with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Trump was asked about the summit today. Here's some of what he had to say.
The sanctions are on in full. As you know, I haven't taken sanctions off. I'd love to be able to, but in order to do that, we have to do something that's meaningful on the other side. But Chairman Kim and I have a very good relationship. I wouldn't be surprised to see something work out.
Now, Christian, everybody knows that Chairman Kim doesn't make any real decisions without talking to President Xi of China, and I guess he met with him last week. How closely is what happens with North Korea linked to what happens with China?
It's very close. China has been a key enabler of the North Korean regime over the years. There is some separation, though. Basically, those two countries are most aligned when they're concerned with U.S. forces and capabilities being moved into the Western Pacific. So they were both singing from the same page, as was Russia, when the United States provided a very sophisticated missile defense system to South Korea called THAAD. But they don't always move in lockstep. And, Kim's, the North Korean tyrant, his foremost concern is staying in power himself. So if he decides that, moving forward with a deal with the United States will augment his power or preserve it, and that's the best path, and I think he'd be willing to defy China somewhat.
Oh, we'll see what happens there. Michael, what's your take on this?
My take is I don't think anybody should trust Kim. He's in it for himself, and just stated, if it's better for him to split from China a little bit, he'll do that, but I really can't see it coming. I think he's playing a game, and the President of the United States is willing to partner with him in the game. I don't know if we'll be any safer. The reason I feel safe is because the USS Ronald Reagan is stationed in Tokyo, Japan, sent there by Obama to keep an eye on North Korea. That's why I feel safe.
Well, at least that's there. Let's talk a little bit more. Trump recently spoke about his top intel chief, guys like DNI Chief Dan Coats. They've painted a very different picture of U.S. relations with North Korea. Newsmax CEO Chris Reddy was on CNN recently. He said this disagreement on policy would lead to a change in leadership at the U.S. National Intelligence Office.
I think you have a classic example here where Director Coats is trying to make policy and not inform policy. The purpose of intelligence is to give the president the facts, let him decide and make the decisions, not to publicly declare that his policies are going to fail a week before he goes over to North Korea on this very important summit.
Now, President Trump was asked today whether or not he had plans to replace Dan Coats, and Trump said that he hasn't even thought about it. But Christian, Chris makes some good points. It's difficult when you have your DNI up there testifying before Congress, basically undercutting what the president is saying.
Yeah, the DNI, both the person and the institution, are a complete waste of space. It was an extra layer of bureaucracy slapped on top of the intelligence community, a.k.a. the intelligence bureaucracy, after 9/11. But it hasn't done anything to help the president or combatant commanders do their jobs. This bureaucracy altogether, $50 billion a year, not just the DNI, the whole intel bureaucracy. And you could get rid of half of it tomorrow, and I'm sure our president and combatant commanders could still have all the intelligence they need. I have a better idea. As opposed to just firing Coats, just get rid of him and don't replace it. You just don't need that extra layer of bureaucracy. You certainly don't need someone up there contradicting you in Congress and also stating things that are fairly obvious. Oh, North Korea would like to keep its nuclear weapons. Russia might be a problem. China might be a problem. I would be happy to provide that expert analysis and only charge $25 billion for it.
It'd be well worth it, Christian. You're a good bargain there. Guys,
you could ask the man on the street, and he could have answered the questions that Coach did. But you're right. You don't put somebody in a position and then have them contradict you after you put them in that position. That is just not the right thing to do. I'm surprised he's still there.
All right, gentlemen, thanks so much. Coming up, the latest on Jussie Smollett's case. Does the Empire actor now have new evidence that backs up his claim, or to the contrary? Who is the Democratic frontrunner to challenge Trump in 2021? Poll results may surprise you. We'll be right back with those stories and more here on Newsmax Now. Watch Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems, or go to newsmaxtv.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.